doing my first cut on the new lathe. I've got a part for the tail of the airplane that I was going to do. I was going to set it up on the faceplate because it's kind of an odd shape. So I put the faceplate on. That was the first thing I mounted on here. I got it all set up and decided that I would true the faceplate up and then mount that piece up on it. But as I got to looking, it was kind of difficult to set it up here on the faceplate, and I got to checking and I can use the 3-jaw chuck for that. But since I've got the faceplate mounted up on here, I decided to go ahead and true it up. And it's actually running pretty smooth, but I figured I'd go ahead and true the face of it up, so the next time I put it on here, it'll be all set up. And you can see a red mark coming around there. That's some stamping that was already in there that limits the RPM to use the faceplate on there to 900 RPM. And there's a mark stamp in the spindle itself. So I've got those two lined up. I put some red paint over the stamping of that and figured I'll go over that with the lathe tool and trim up that outside edge, just true it up, and that'll just leave the red lines in the marks that are stamped in there, etched in there, whatever they are. And then those will line up with the O that's already stamped in the spindle for setting this up again. So it's all set up, trued up on this setting. I'll know how to index it back on here again. Well, I'm just going slow. I've got the lathe set up for the 70 RPM, and I've got my feed set up on the cross slide. And this is the first time I've ever used that. And I've got it set in the slow feed speed. Everything could probably go faster, but I wanted to start out slow. Once I true this up, this faceplate will be trued to this spindle and flat on the face. So when I go to use it again, if I ever go to use it again, it'll be all set. And it's also indexed to that spot. So I'm probably slow on everything, especially with the carbide tool. But everything's new to me here. The lathe is new. This is the first cut on it. This faceplate, I didn't know exactly how true it was going to be, but it appears like it was pretty darn true, actually. But there's going to be a interrupted cut on it as we go along here. And again, I got a carbide tool on there. I've never used those before like this with an insert on. And I've never used the power crossfeed before. This is cast iron. I've got a newspaper set up underneath everything to catch all the shavings and stuff from the cast iron. I'm not sure how that works, cast iron works with these carbide tools. Anyway, this is what I'm doing. I'm going slow, taking everything easy, and it is cutting. And I don't know how much of a cut I'm making on there. I didn't measure it. I just wanted to true that up. But like I said, it's so far, the way it looks, this faceplate was actually pretty doggone true. I'm just taking a light cut on it, and I don't see any interruptions in the cut at all the way around there. Well, I sped that up to 200 RPM, and I also changed my feed rate on there. So it's feeding a little faster. It's making a lot smoother cut, but it's sending cast iron dust all over the place here. It's really kicking that up. When it comes down to the next stage there, I might slow that speed back down. It's really kicking the dust out of there now. It's going all over. I did stop it, backed it up, and put some more newspaper down there to collect more of the shavings off of that. It is making a nice finish on there though. My first cut on the lathe doing this faceplate face. I was surprised at how flat it turned out to be. I made my first cut from the inside out using the crossfeed. I had everything set up really slow. I had it at 70 RPM and I had the crossfeed set up really slow. When I got out here a little bit to this next ring, I set it up 200 RPM and I set my crossfeed speed up higher. It was cutting pretty good then, but the chips were really a-flying. So I stopped and I got another piece of newspaper and spread out on here to catch them because they were just going everywhere. When I was going at 70 RPM, the chips were pretty much coming off of this cutter and just dropping pretty much straight down. But once it sped up, they were going everywhere. Well, what I wound up doing was going and getting my shop vac, and I held that on there, and that did a really good job. I mean, you can see the mess we got here from the shavings all over the place, and the shop vac cleaned that up really good, kept them from going anywhere. The only problem here is the places on the lathe are all covered with oil, got oil all over in it, and so a lot of the chips are stuck in the oil and will have to be wiped down and cleaned up like that. Like here, the The shop vac wouldn't pick it up, but it picked it up really good. I was really surprised at how well that finish came out on there until I got out to this last ring, and then it was really rough. I thought at first that this might be convex, higher out on the inside than it was on the outside, because it cleaned up good here, and then it didn't clean up here, and I thought maybe it didn't clean up. But after I changed the feed on the lathe to go back in to make another cut on it to see, and it was just that high speed, it was chattering out here on this outside edge, high speed, 200 RPM, high speed. But anyway, it was chattering out here and making a mess. So I turned the speed back down to 70 RPM, and I dropped my feed speed down and went back over it from the outside in, and I got a whole lot nicer finish on that now. And no problem with the interrupted cut on there, going through all these holes on that. Everything looked good. I think I would have got a better finish if I would have turned this cutter so I wasn't going right directly on the point of the cutter. There's the cutter there. I had it pretty much going in there 90 degrees, pretty much straight in, and if I'd have gone a little bit to the side, I might have got a little better cut with a little shear cut on it. I don't know. I don't know how that works on these carbide cutters. I usually grind my own cutters out of high-speed steel, and I like going on it with a cut at a little more of an angle. In fact, a finish cut, I'll do a shear cut on it and get a real nice finish on them sometimes if I'm lucky. But this actually turned out pretty good. It's not bad at all. I've got a lot of shavings around there, chips to clean up and stuff. Unfortunately, most of it was caught in the newspaper. I had to run this in at this angle to get clearance. This faceplate is just so wide that to get the clearance I needed to get the tool bit out here far enough to make a good cut. That's just kind of the way I had to lay it out. But that vacuum cleaner worked really good on keeping those chips, like I said, going slow. They just kind of build up on here and rolled over going down at the 70 RPM. But when I sped up to 200, they were flying out all over the place. But that vacuum cleaner, I just held it right in there against it, and that just picked everything up real nice. I got the outside of this faceplate trued up. It was just a little bit out around. It wasn't bad at all, but I just took one cut on it, just a shallow cut, and got it trued up pretty good. This is the point right here that's marked on this spindle. It's got a 0 stamped in it right there next to this one clamp, and then put a red mark on that, red paint on that. I'll go ahead and scrape or probably sand that off or something, because it's stamped in, and I put the red on there so the red fills up the indentation. But right now it's all over everything, so that's what I did here. We've got the numbers on here. I just painted over this whole thing with the red, and then when I cut that off, that edge off, that just left a little bit of outline of red in there. That didn't leave a whole lot. It almost cut it out of there, but it leaves just enough you can see it. And then I put a red dot here on the inside, and that's where it lined up with this red dot if I mount this again. So this is all trued up to this mounting position on this spindle, and the front of it is all nice and trued up. Looks good, I think. It's good and flat.